So, today's topic is how the legendary English playwright William Shakespeare used to structure his tragedies, by example of Romeo and Juliet. First up, the story needs a tragic hero, someone of royal and virtuous character who needs to face adversity, either caused by their flawed character or the sealed fate given upon them throughout the story. Most of the time, these heroes die only after realizing their grave mistake. For example, Romeo faces battles and hardships in trying to get with Juliet. In the end, he dies because of his unstoppable love for his lover. Secondly, the story needs a clear separation of good and evil. This is not only to stir up the imagination of the audience, but also to create a much easier to identify dynamic between the two sides, one to root for and the other to despise. For example, the families Capulet and Montague and Paris are ignorant and show no sympathy with Romeo and Juliet at all, which makes it easier to root for them and hate for those who deny their love. Thirdly, hamartia, which roughly translates to miss the mark. In this case, it means our protagonist has one great flaw throughout the story that eventually leads to their downfall. And again, for example, Romeo is obviously rash, which results in him instantly taking revenge for Mercutio, as well as him being a young and hopeless romantic, which leads to his fast, big love for Juliet, which eventually leads to him taking his own life for her. Every Shakespeare story feels like a tragic waste. Both heroes and villains die in vain in a disturbing demise. Both Romeo and Juliet die in a very dramatic way, wasting their life because of the pointless fights between the Capulet and Montagues. All stories follow a certain conflict, either an external one or an internal one. For example, Romeo and Juliet face an external conflict, the endless fight between Capulet and Montague, something more or less out of their control, so an external conflict. The supernatural is a very popular element as well, a very popular way for Shakespeare to spice up his work. In Romeo and Juliet, the curse of Mercutio can be seen as a supernatural element as it comes into action later down the line, with both of them dying in the end. The whole story is a catharsis, as we root for the hero, Romeo, and hate the opposition, Paris. This conflict leads to a roller coaster ride of emotions for the audience as the tragedy unfolds. But the story eventually ends with a lack of poetic justice, as not every side experiences justice. Romeo and Juliet die in an unjustified manner, and not every character pay for their actions, like for example their parents and their respected houses. Overall, we can say that Shakespeare stories are works of fate. Romeo and Juliet's fates were sealed when their families got cursed by Mercutio, and their forbidden love was overall something that we all knew from the very beginning wasn't going to work out.